Hello, my name is Tom Stiles, and this is Tom's Radio Room Show number 121. This is part 2 of the review of the Grundig S350DL Shortwave receiver. Now, on part 1, I told you about the features, the controls, and everything, and I'll go over a few things real quickly. And then we'll get into what's normally in part 2 of my reviews now, which is the actual use of the radio. You know, how easy it is to tune, what kind of reception you get, and those things. And I'll be doing my report card. And the factors going into the report card are look and feel, readability, power options, tuning, audio quality, and any special features. And finally, which is what we're going to do today, or this morning, it's 5:45 Eastern Daylight Time. So that kind of gives you an idea of the conditions. And then we'll give it a final average grade. Now, speaking of conditions, last night, I think there was, according to the one reports I got, some space phenomena going on, and reception can change radically depending on what things are happening up in space. And last night there was some space activity in that there was some changes to the magnetic field on the Earth due to activity on the sun. And reception last night was exceptional. I mean, this thing was just picking up stations every place. And I didn't have time to do a reception report, but I think it would have been a little biased because those weren't normal conditions. Those were kind of the exceptions. Matter of fact, the conditions were so good, this old patrolman, Radio Shack patrolman that I showed you in one of my previous shows, it was picking up everything in the world. So I decided not to do or use that time frame to do this report because, like I say, it's not what you're normally going to get. So we waited till this morning and we're going to do it. Now, okay, a couple of things I didn't mention, but I put it as a comment, not a comment, but a little flag in the last video about this radio, is the power sources. You know, what are the power options? Well, the power options are 3. It has an AC adapter that you can plug in the back, which I'll be using this morning. It also can be powered by D cells. We'll give it, you know, long life of reception on big D cells. Makes it quite heavy, but you get a long life. Or AA. And AA, of course, is not going to give you as long of reception time as the D cells, but number 1, it makes the radio lighter, and number 2, sometimes you don't have any D cells lying around because you've used them all up for your flashlights and stuff, but you got a bunch of AA's. So you put AA's in. Now, the other thing that, as far as use, that I noticed after using it for a while now, is that these knobs here, are a little loose, I'll call them. It's kind of like the tuning knob that's kind of wobbles. These switches here are kind of loose. Not a big deal, but it just, you don't get that clicking detent feel that you do on other radios. So not a big deal, but I thought I'd mention that. Also, I've noticed after using it for a while that the volume knob is here and the RF gain control, or as somebody calls it, the attenuator, is over here. And because the volume knob is located around these knobs and the switches, for me, it would have been better is the volume knob would have been here, so that when you're tuning and it's too low or too high a volume, you can quickly go down here instead of having to go over here. You understand what I mean here? Not a big deal. Maybe if you were left-handed, you know, maybe this would be okay, but to me it seems like these should have been switched, but no big deal. Okay, the other thing, speaking of volume, that I've noticed in reception is that last night, because signals were coming in clear, even the weak signals, for the weak signals, even though they were clear, I had to turn the volume all the way up to hear them. Now keep in mind, in my workshop normally I have a bunch of fans and maybe even the wall air conditioner going, so it's quite noisy in here. So I had to turn the volume all the way up, and I still was having trouble completely hearing it compared to my patrolman over there, which I had the volume on that set at half, and it was plenty loud. And so that's something that's another minor nit, but if you're in a noisy environment, I don't think the audio output of this is going to be sufficient for you. Now you can always use headphones, and normally when I'm receiving just for myself and not doing a video, I will use headphones or earbuds because my office, my workshop is noisy, so that's not unusual. So that's just another little minor thing that I saw. Okay, let's turn this on. Well, it is on, and we'll turn the volume up. Okay, I got that at full volume. Now, granted, you know, that little phenomenon that was taking place last night with good reception, that's gone. That's one thing. Number two, it's already almost 6 o'clock in the morning, so reception quality is gone down just in normal. So right now I'm tuned to, or trying to tune to 5 megahertz to see if I can hear, and there it is. Okay, there's WWV on 5 megahertz. One of the things I do as far as reception testing is I try to tune those WWV time channels, which are at 5, 10, 15 megahertz thereabouts, to see if I'm getting reception there. And they're usually not that easy for me to receive. So I'm getting the one at 5 megahertz. So that's pretty good. If we go up to 10, I'll turn the volume down. Now this ambient noise that you hear wasn't there last night. So that was the other good thing about reception last night, is the ambient noise was down, plus the reception was good. Not normal. Okay, let's go down to 10. Okay, there's approximately 10 megahertz, and I don't hear anything. So normally in the early morning hours, from about I would say 5 o'clock till about just after sunrise, your best reception is in the lower frequencies from like 5 megahertz down to 2 megahertz. Above 5 megahertz early in the morning, the reception is not as good unless conditions are different. Okay, so let's go back down. Now again, this switch for the band select to me feels kind of sloppy, I'll call it. So okay, now we're back down. Turn the volume back up here. We'll tune around down here. Now keep in mind, well, that's really quiet. Here we go. Keep in mind that when I test these radios, I use their built-in telescopic antenna. And of course, we all know that using an external long wire antenna, for instance, is best. And I showed you in my previous video about this radio the connections that are available in the back. Okay, there's a station most likely from Cuba or South America, and being in Florida, it's pretty easy to pick up those stations. Now, the other thing you will notice is that it's fading in and out, and the signal strength meter is showing essentially no bars. So that means that's a pretty weak station that it's picking up. Let's turn the volume back down a little bit. Go on. So that was at 5.025. Now the other thing you'll notice, or I hope you notice, is that I'm using the outer tuning ring here, which is the coarse, and it zips through the band pretty fast.
Type I'll dip back a little bit below what I've heard here. Now God sees the heart, and I know, and I can't say this enough.
Now, as I mentioned before, this is an analog radio, or analog tuner, with a digital display. And, as I mentioned before, they've added on this version of the 350, the DL version, they added some circuitry to help lock in the frequency. So when you get close to a station, that circuitry will kick in and it will start tuning the radio for you. So consequently, if you're watching the digital display, you'll see it'll jump around on you. It won't be just nice and smooth, and that's because you're fighting that circuitry. So a lot of times the best thing to do is, instead of trying to get it on the exact display frequency, like this is 6.094 right now, and the station is probably on 6.095. So instead of trying to get it on 6095, just let that circuitry tune it itself, and you won't be fighting it like I was just doing.
Like the woman with the elevator, genuinely get excited in response to his words.
Now see, I lost it because I tried to tune it.
And the expression of gratitude for what's been received.
Now that's coming in pretty good. I'm not sure exactly what station that is, but it sounds like the Christian channel, which comes out of Tennessee, in the United States, United States. That's what that sounds like. Again, it's at 6.094. I don't have my computer on right now, which would give me the schedule, and I could look up the schedule. Because I was concerned that the computer was creating noise. So that's tuned that in pretty good. There was another station there. Again, I'm around 6 megahertz. And what's interesting is it's kind of a straight correlation in that as the day goes along, starting at, we'll say starting at 4 a.m., the band in which the reception is best slowly moves up as the day moves on. So at 4 a.m., like I say, 6 a.m., you're down at the lower band, like I said before, As the day progresses, you'll move up to like 7 megahertz to 9 megahertz. Keeps progressing during the day. Late afternoon, it's all the way up to like 15 megahertz, and just above that. And then at nighttime, in the early evenings, 8 o'clock say, it's most of the band is pretty good. Best is around 14 megahertz. Some is good at as far as as high as 17 megahertz. So it kind of tracks that. So right now I'm kind of staying around the lower mid frequency, around 6 megahertz. Yeah, topped off on that. So this is, I was just going to mention something. This is one thing that, for instance, the G3 that I showed you, you don't have to switch bands in the shortwave area. So it's continuous for the full shortwave spectrum that it receives. This one, it breaks it down into 3 shortwave. And so as you're tuning, for instance, I was tuning up, I was on shortwave 1, I was tuning up. When I got up to 8.3 something, I've gone to the end of that band for shortwave 1. So I have to flip the switch. And what happens is, since this is a mechanical tuner, analog tuner, when I switched, I was at the top end of the previous band, shortwave 1. When I switched, it went to the top end of band 2. So it jumped all the way up to 17.5 megahertz. So if I was tuning, like I just saw before, if I was tuning up to 8 megahertz and I realized, okay, I need to go beyond that, so I got to switch the band. Now I've got to turn the radio way down all the way through the spectrum, which it goes pretty fast. And then I'm down at the bottom end, down to 8 megahertz area. So, you know, if you hadn't been listening to a station that was, you know, right at one of those switches between the bands, it would be a little bit of a nuisance to tune it. Now, the good thing is the bands overlap, so that the previous one, let me go back to it. Previous one goes up to, and I forgot already, but we'll crank up there. Goes up to 8.3. And I switch to the next one, which again I have to tune back down to get to the bottom. And that goes down to 7.8. So you can see the bands are overlapping. So if you're close to the edge of a band and you're tuning on one of the bands, when you switch to the next band, the lower part of that band will overlap the upper part of the other band, so that you don't have any gaps. There's no gaps. It's just that you have to switch. To me, that's a nuisance. I don't like to have to switch bands. Now, it's not a big nuisance because typically there'll be certain stations you want to listen to, and you know where they are, so you know, okay, I want to listen to, say, 14 megahertz. You know to put the switch in the second position to get to that, and you're there. Okay, not a big deal, except if you're just looking across the whole spectrum for things to listen to. It is a little bit of a nuisance, not a big deal. So anyway, this morning what I'm showing you is that reception in general is poor, which is not surprising. Yeah, not surprising, and that's why I like to normally do these reception tests later in the evening when reception is better. but I didn't get a chance to do it last night, so I'm doing it this morning. So keep that in mind about reception. The AM and FM reception is perfect. It works great. You get good sound quality. This big speaker gives you great great FM sound, so that's not a problem. The only little quirks I told you about is the tuning, about the fact that it's an analog tuner. The switching, to me, that's a little nuisance on the shortwave bands. I wish these two controls, the volume and the RF gain control, were switched, although it's logically in the right place because the bass and treble, bass and treble controls are right here, so all the audio stuff is together. That makes sense logically. The volume, like I say, not too happy with the volume. If you're, like I say, in a noisy environment, it may not be as much volume as you want. And if you're receiving a weak station, you may not be having enough volume. Again, that you can overcome that by using headphones or earbuds. So let's go back to the report card here and see what kind of grades we're going to give this baby. Okay, look and feel of the radio. Look is excellent. I think it's a very classic looking radio, very clean looking radio. It feels strong. As I mentioned before, the telescopic antenna is a very heavy telescopic antenna. You don't feel that it's going to easily break, so that's good. A little negative on the switches here. They feel a little wobbly, much like the tuner knob feels a little wobbly. Not a big deal, just something to get used to. The placement of the volume and RF, I would prefer that they be reversed. So overall, I'll give look and feel, I must say, a B. I'm going to give it a B. Okay. Now, the next thing to check that I'm reporting on is readability. How easy is it to read this? Very easy to read. It's nice big display, nice big numbers, very easy to read. I'm going to give that an A. Compared to these real small portable shortwave radios that for me, 4 eyes, I have a little problem with this. Okay, power options, which I mentioned again today, AC, either DC or D cells or AA cells, power options, excellent. I'll give it an A. They're doing pretty good. Tuning, I struggle a little bit with the tuning. Now, I'm from the old school with analog tuners, so I can get used to it, which I have, but I think someone new into listening shortwave radio and is used to other digital devices, I don't think they'll like this analog tuning. I don't think they'll like it. So I'm going to give that, so I give it a C or a D. I'll give it a C. It works okay, but it's a little bit of a nuisance, so I'm going to give that a C. Audio quality. Now this is a mixed bag because of the fact that the volume isn't as loud as I would like it. Now, if you're on FM radio, you got plenty of volume. Matter of fact, you couldn't listen to it with the volume turned up all the way. So FM wise, there's plenty of volume, but shortwave wise, when you're trying to tune in some weak signal and you've got a noisy environment. Now keep that in mind, a noisy environment. Now if it's quiet like I got it right now, and it's quite hot in here, it's not a problem. So I'm going to give audio quality, even though the sound when you can hear it is great, I'm going to give it a C. Just the volume is not there. Okay, special features. Now, one special feature that I didn't mention is on the side here, there's a filter switch. Now, there is also a narrow wide switch for when you're listening shortwave, and that works good. But this filter switch, extra filter switch, which I kind of consider it like the old noise blankers, that if you had a car radio, a shortwave radio in a car, and you had ignition noise, you could put this noise blanker on and it would cut out those frequencies from getting into the radio. Well, I used that a little bit last night when those signals were booming in, because that's really where you could tell it. And all it seemed to do is just attenuate the signal. So that special feature, nah, it's not even there as far as I'm concerned. The clock and the alarms and the backlight that comes on when you tune the radio, that's a special feature I like. That's a plus. I think that's about all. And then of course the timer where you can set it to be on for 60 minutes or 90 or whatever, and it shuts itself off. I like that feature. So I'll give features, I'll give it a C. Not a lot of features, but the ones that are there, I'll give it a C. Reception, now unfortunately the reception is not very good this morning. I've listened to the radio about 5 times, different times of the day, and overall the reception is good. It's good. Right now I don't think any of my radios I can receive much. It's just because it's just conditions. So I'm going to give reception a B. So here we go. B, A, C, 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 B. I would say if you average this, you got a B. I think you got a B or B minus. I'm going to give this radio a B minus. Overall, I like the radio. As I had mentioned in show 1 or part 1 of this radio is about $50 or $60 new. Its replacement, which is the S350, which is all digital, is about $100. So the question is, do you want to pay the extra $30 or $40 for the extra features? That's what it comes down to. I mean, I think overall this is a good radio for listening. It has a few minor quirks, not a big deal. If you could find one of these on sale, a used one on sale, boy, I'd grab it. If you could get one of these for like $40 on sale on a used market, I'd grab it. I would grab it. Now you have to be a little careful in that this originally came out as just an S350, and it had some problems. It had problems with drifting, number one, and that's why they put that circuitry in there to prevent that. So you really don't want to get one of those. You want to try to get a 350DL, and like I said, on Amazon new, these are about $55 or $60 new, so that'll give you some idea to what you should pay for a used one. And there are a lot of these on the used market because they were a very popular radio. So you'll see a lot of them, but stay away from anything but the 350DL. So that's the show for today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget, if you want to get in that contest of getting the little weather band radio, to please send me an email, and we're going to have a drawing for the next Saturday show. We're going to have the drawing, and then this is for the fact that we've got over 500 subscribers now. So that's the show. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.